This one isn't going to be um, a review, so to speak. It's not going to be like that because I couldn't tell you anything about what's going on in this film at all. It finally happened. Oh my gosh, it finally happened. A movie that was worse than even Day of the Living Dead. At least with Day of the Living Dead, at least with Blue Call, at least with those types of films, I could tell you what happened. At least with Righteous Villains, I could tell you at least something that happened in the film. There was something in it that I could watch. In this one, I checked out completely, totally. The entire runtime, I was not able to even pay attention to it. I have to thank myself, at least, that I was able to watch the entire runtime of the film. I put it on, and then the end credits was playing. Before I knew it, the end credits was playing. Thankfully, what happened during the film, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't pay attention to it. I always say that with so many of these films, your most important part of the film is the opening act. The first act is the most important part of your film. In fact, I would argue that it is more important than the finale of the film. It's more important than the climax because the first act is the part that keeps your audience's attention. It is the part that keeps them willing to watch, willing to pay attention. It's that attention grabbing sensationalism that gets the viewer what's the word, or determined, motivated, interested enough to watch the rest of the film, the other two acts. If your first act is so unbelievably boring, so unbelievably uneventful, so unbelievably full of dialogue that you cannot even pay attention to, that try as you might, you could not even pay attention to it. If it's full of that uninterestingness, you will have caused your viewer to check out of the film, and either they will either just shut it off at this point, or they will be like me and they will watch it to the end credits because they owe it enough to that to watch to the end credits. This one, if I wasn't planning on making a video about this film, I would have not watched to the end credits. I would not have even bothered. This film was an eye catcher, though. The cover was an eye catcher. The way this cover looks, the way that the case feels, Lionsgate, the way everything looks makes you think that this film looks interesting, that it's going to be interesting. But it's not. It's not interesting. At least not to me, it wasn't. I couldn't tell you anything that happens in the movie. I couldn't tell you who's in it. I couldn't tell you why anything was happening. I could tell you there's some sort of spooky thing that happens in the final act. I couldn't care about what was going on. Then it resolves itself. There was a lot of artsiness going on through here. Artsiness in the way of, like, say, Pig with Nicolas Cage. But the difference between Pig and Fallen is that Pig had expert writing, expert characterizations, interesting people that you wanted to pay attention to and you wanted to watch their journey. In this, I was not interested in the main character. I was not interested in the main character's journey. I was not interested in what was happening to him because there was nothing to catch my attention. It failed on all counts to catch my attention. The only thing I could tell you about the story is what's on the back of the case. So let's do that, shall we? They took his world. Now they've come for his soul. Father Abraham was ready to save the world from an evil menace using exorcism, until tragedy struck. Years later, he lives on a remote farm with his daughter, haunted by the faces of those he saved and those he could not. After finding a pale humanoid creature lurking in the woods one night, he shoots and cremates the monster, but all too soon he discovers that the beast was not alone, and that his troubles have only just begun. This frightening supernatural horror tale will chill you to your soul. Yeah, I guess for the most part that's correct, and that's what happens. There is a priest man, this man right here, a priest man who I'm not even sure if he did exorcism. It doesn't look like it. It looks like he had a wife who was pregnant, and he had nightmares about the wife getting the child, and then there's some spooky stuff happening in the hospital. It turns out it's a nightmare. And then he's told he's got to go take a leave of absence into the countryside because of some spooky stuff going on. So he goes into the countryside, and I guess something happens there. Something happens there. He keeps on thinking about stuff. There's a lot of long periods of them just talking about nothing, and nothing interesting at any rate. And then there's some spooky climax at the end with some creature feature guy that comes out of the woods to haunt him and stalk him. He's got to take out a gun and shoots this creature spooky guy. And then the film ends. This film, kind of like, well, the reason why I bring up Pig is that in the movie Pig, there had like these little title cards in between each segment of the film, between each act, and this one does the same thing. And there's a lot of artsy feel about the film. It's a very quiet film. It's a very quiet film. There's not too much in the way of music. There's not too much in the way of pizzazzy special effects and all sorts of whooping and whooshing. There's no jump scares. I guess that's a good thing. But this wasn't scary at all. This wasn't a horror film. It doesn't feel like a horror film at all. It just wasn't interesting. And I can tell you that I've watched some things that a lot of other people have found uninteresting. Lured, I will forever say, is a very interesting film. Even found footage, and I would recommend you watch that over Fallen. I would recommend you watch Day of the Living Dead over Fallen. I would recommend you watch Blue Call over Fallen. I would recommend you even watch Righteous Villains over Blue Call. Because, I mean, over Fallen. And over Blue Call, actually. But it's Fallen. It's just, there's nothing in here. There's nothing else I can unpack. I've tried my best. This one failed completely for me. Now, I don't want to say that the people here are the cause for this thing failing. I'm just saying that what they did failed to grasp my attention. So what does that mean? It means that every film will capture an audience member differently. This film didn't capture my attention, but maybe it might capture yours. So if you want to watch this film and you find it interesting, then that's all it means. It means the film is something that you find interesting. It's not something that I found interesting, though, because a lot of other films have done this better. The Exorcist is probably one of the best films regarding exorcism that will ever be made. This one tries not to be The Exorcist, clearly. It's about a priest who does exorcisms, I guess, but there's just nothing in here. There's just nothing in here. It's very quiet. It's very artsy and just uninteresting. Uninteresting. I couldn't pay attention to it. Maybe it's because I'm tired. Maybe it's because I don't feel well. Maybe because of all those extenuating circumstances that I couldn't pay attention the way that the filmmakers wanted me to in order to grasp fully this film and appreciate it. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's correct. Maybe I'm not the correct frame of reference to really grasp this film in the way that the filmmakers wanted me to grasp it. Or maybe it's just not that interesting, period. Who knows? Be imaginative, everybody.